Chapter 7, Activation. Tuesday, September 1st, 2026, 3:26 p.m. They had stopped humming, and everything was all quiet now. That's the first thing I had noticed when I had gotten home from my shift on call with the department. I couldn't hear them. It was a disquieting silence, and I wondered what it meant. From the edge of our driveway, there was one not 100 feet west of us. There was another one about 75 feet down the road toward Mick and Sam, and there was another some 250 feet north of us on Old Dover. It was still quite hot outside, though we were now in September. My watch said that today's high would be in the mid-70s, and they were doing that sweating thing again. They seemed to sweat more than humans. This time they were dripping in a torrent underneath them, and someone said that their sweat had been collected and taken somewhere to be analyzed. "Honey, do you hear that?" I asked Melissa. She stopped and looked at me. "Come here." I took her by the hand back out the garage into the driveway. "Wait, I have soup on the stove, hun," she protested weakly. "Just come here, listen. You hear that?" She listened with her eyes, looking around. "I don't hear anything." "Exactly," I looked at her. "They stopped. Can't you tell? They stopped that stupid humming." "Oh, yeah. What does that mean?" "Beats me." I shrugged and put my arm around her as we watched the nearest one. I could tell she was getting antsy. "Hun, I gotta get to the soup." I released her from my arm and just stood there watching them, wondering what the cessation of humming could possibly portend. I was biting my fingers, chewing the nails down to a scratchy pulp. Melissa called back to me over her shoulder. "Come on in, hun. A package came for you, by the way." I know exactly what it is, and I can't wait to use it. It was a DJI Mavic Air 3, a modern marvel of drone technology. I figured if other people were doing it, why not me? It cost a pretty penny, but if you wanted a good drone, you got DJI. Ordered it on Prime 2 days ago. So here it was, and I was going to go out and get a good look at one of them myself. It was now 87 days since the appearance of the aliens, and it was high time for me to get an up-close and personal glimpse of what the hell was wreaking so much havoc on our planet by simply floating there. I pulled it out of the box and quickly assembled the rotors to the 4 legs, slapped a battery into the drone itself. Didn't bother with registering it as I was only going to go 50 feet up, maybe slightly more for a downward view. Sales of drones must have just skyrocketed following the appearance. "What is that?" Melissa asked, coming around the corner to the dining room. "Did you buy a drone, hun?" "Yep, and I'm going to see what these things look like." "Oh, honey, wow. Please just be careful. You could get too close and actually slice it open. I mean, did you think of that?" She was following me through the house as I made for the back porch. "Nope. Honey, wait, just... Okay, fine, I'm coming with you. Do you even know how to use one?" I sighed. "Hun, how hard can it be? I'll go slow." "Kids, come here. Knowledge is power. Let's get up close and have us some knowledge and some power." "What did you say, Daddy?" said Cameron. He was already outside, hanging out in the tire swing, staring up at them in judgment. "Oh, good, you're here, bub. Come see what Daddy got. Teaspoon, come here, please. Ruddy." Before too long, I had downloaded an app, signed myself up, paired the controller to my drone, and was lifting off. Jack made one heck of a stink about it, growling and then erupting into barks as I lifted off. He actually tried to jump up and nip at it. The kids were all crowded around me. Thankfully, I had one of the bigger screen iPhones, so it afforded us the ability to all see it. "Are you seeing this, Teaspoon?" "Yeah, Dad, cool." "I bet you'll never look at aliens the same way again, huh?" She shook her head. I was slowly closing in on the one closest to our home over the backyard. "Careful, hun. Please be careful," Melissa cautioned, trying to get a closer look. "Ew, those are its arms. What's that thing on its back?" "I don't know. I saw that on that news report. It looks kind of like a gem, even, like it's actually embedded into its neck." "Yeah, remember I was saying it looks like a chemotherapy port." "What's chemotherapy, Daddy?" Ruddy asked with a scrunched eye, confused at the word and grossly mispronouncing it. "It's a way to help treat people sick with cancer." The drone started sounding a proximity alert, and I backed off. We were all watching it through my phone's display, occasionally looking back up at the actual drone positioned near the alien up there in the sky so near us. It was a surreal experience being so close to it. I circled my drone around the thing and went up and over its head, tilting the gimbal with the camera so I could see straight down. Whoa, I breathed out loudly and slowly. Melissa and the kids said nothing. Those are its eyes. See its eyes, kids? And look at all those flaps running down their sides. Are they slightly rippling? Call me crazy, but it looks like they're rippling a little bit. Maybe that's how they send air through their bodies and float. Maybe they're partly filled with helium or something. Like a helium balloon? Cameron asked. Yeah, sure, something like that. I don't know. It was mesmerizing. I wanted to sit here all the time and be the one guy who captured them waking up or something, to be right here when it did so, capturing all of it. Someday, somewhere, someone was going to ask for the Shipley footage, exploring the origins of when it all went down. I just prayed that day was still far off. Wednesday, September 2nd, 2026, 5:02 p.m. Melissa had made a Tuscany soup like they do at Olive Garden, zuppa toscana. It was awesome. Ruddy didn't want it and kept pining for mac and cheese. No, bud, you can't keep eating that stuff. You won't grow up. Do you want to grow up big and strong like Daddy? He shook his head. I sighed. He had called my bluff. Well, then, you leave me with little choice, I said. All of you do. Melissa turned around and looked at me from the stove as she went for seconds. The time has come for me to exact the needed punishment. Here I paused extensively and theatrically, looking at each of them in turn, with a dad joke. Ruddy face-palmed while the older kids rolled their eyes once more. Oh, Dad, every single night, Sissy complained. That's right, until Jesus returns. Ha ha ha, I laughed maniacally. Get used to it. Here we go. As much as they pretended to hate it, it was all for show, because each time I paused before the joke and looked them all over suspensefully, you could just tell that they wanted it. Were I to rescind it and pull a never mind, they would rapidly go in for the retrieval and the quick save. What kind of tree is the scariest? They waited. A bamboo, I shouted. Cameron dropped his head into his hands, and Sissy snorted. Daddy, you sounded like a ghost, Ruddy cheered and pointed at me. Oh, honey, that's a good one, Melissa turned and cheered. I like that one. Well, at least somebody's happy. See, Mama's happy, kids. Try and be like Mama. Yeah, big and strong like Mama, Ruddy exclaimed. Daddy, bamboo isn't even a tree, Cameron corrected me. It's a kind of grass, you knucklehead. Who cares? The joke was funny. And you little stinker, I turned to Ruddy. So that's how you want to play it, huh? I ought to tickle you right in your high chair, right now, you little penguin. You too, bub, teaspoon, you want some of me? Their eyes widened and they looked at each other in mock fright. Okay, they nervously agreed, smiling. You got 10 seconds to hide. I eat the first kid I can find. And just like that, they took off and hid. Ruddy tried to hold really still and quiet in his high chair, though I could feel his eyes following me. I had crept slowly into the living room and was just at the entrance to the hall when I abruptly turned around and saw Ruddy gasp and turn his head back the way it was, pretending to be a statue. He had been following me quietly out of the side of his eyes. Hold still, penguin, Melissa urged, smiling. I crept up silently behind him, growling like a monster, and he held so still. He didn't turn to look at me once. I got closer and closer, grunting and breathing hard, pretending to be salivating, until finally he couldn't take it anymore, and he could feel my hot breath on his neck. The poor little guy squealed in fright. I laughed and kissed the top of his head. I always loved how their hair smelled, and helped him out of his chair. His little diaper butt ran off down the hall after his brother and sister, who were concealed somewhere in the bowels of our house. I was about to do some serious finding and tickling. I heard Melissa chuckle behind me as I snarled my way down the hall. Bamboo. Jeez. Thursday, September 3rd, 2026, 4:13 p.m. Work was done, and I had come home and changed around 3:30 p.m. and then loaded Cameron and Sissy into Mick and Sam's RV as they swung by on their way north. Melissa stayed home with Ruddy. And now, we were here. Today was our church's annual Labor Day weekend Old Dover run, before we hit the actual Monday holiday, and then the kids had to go back to school, if they even would. We hadn't forgotten about the aliens, of course. They were still there, staring up at the sky. But Pastor Bill and Sandy felt this year, now more than ever, was so important to maintain tradition and to show the world around us that we trusted in God and that He would protect us. The run fell on a weird day this year, Thursday. Pastor Bill and Sandy decided on it for a few reasons. One, it would be better than on a Friday, with less plans to conflict with. Two, people would still be in town before they left for Labor Day weekend. And three, he was tired of waiting and wanted to raise our spirits. I couldn't blame him. So there we were at the intersection of Highway 272 and Old Dover Road, people running everywhere to get in position, and someone would launch a ticker tape bomb all around us to shower us as we took off. We had makeshift numbers on our chests. I would be running in the race with Cameron and Sissy. We'd fill Melissa in on the details when we arrived home. I was number 12, Cameron was number 23, and Sissy was number 24. Pastor Bill had a megaphone. "All right, all you guys, you ready to do this?" We all hooped and hollered. "Let's run with all our might. Run the race marked out for you folks. You got this." He smiled and pulled the megaphone away from his face, brandishing an air horn. We braced and waited. "You ready, kids?" I asked my oldest kiddos. "Yep," they said confidently. The air horn sounded loud and clear, and then we were all running. The ticker tape exploded around us. It felt good to be running again with my kids. I looked down at Cameron, and he looked back up at me, smiling. That warmed my heart to know that their little hearts were healthy and beating, that they were strong, that they were outside breathing good, clean air and engaged in something healthy and productive. It was probably a few hundred strong, although I couldn't see all of us. Mick and Sam were in the thick of it somewhere as well. I looked around but hadn't seen the new couple, Anya or Justice, or their little boy, Liam. But then I remembered Melissa saying something about them being gone this weekend to visit her brother, who was enrolling at APU away down south in Clarksville. "You kids doing okay?" I asked them, looking them over. They both panted and were red-faced, but they signaled that they were doing okay, with a hearty smile. The sun was shining down on us, and it felt warm and invigorating. We were about 10 minutes into our run, all of us heading down a blocked-off Old Dover. The trees scrolled by silently over our heads. We had rounded a bit of an angled corner, and that's when we saw it. The alien up ahead, the one most visible for us as we proceeded south, started doing something. It was hard to see it clearly because Old Dover was a thin road lined on both sides with trees, but I made no mistake. The creature was moving, or something was moving around it. The crowd slowed from a clip to a fast walk, and then we slowed to a walk. And then all of us came to a complete standstill, looking up in wonder. A distinct bluish-green mist was emanating from the alien, swirling out of it, over it, enveloping it, as if someone had stuck a pin in a fog machine. It was churning all around it, mixing with the higher air and sometimes wafting away from it, but it didn't dissipate. The creature just jetted more of the mist out, like an octopus. It was swirling out from the flaps on its sides. Its limbs were slowly moving, bones loosening as its long, spindly arms started to move away from its body, stretching after a 3-month slumber. It was waking up. I saw something drop from it and clink to the ground. It was a small object that glittered in the sun and then fell 50 feet to earth, glinting off the sun's rays. Some of us pointed. What was that? Why was it doing that? I squinted, trying to see it clearly through my panting. I don't know why, but suddenly I felt a great dread welling up inside me and washing over me, an inexplicably powerful anxiety rooted in fear, and I just knew we had to get home, right away. I'm sure others felt it too. I looked around nervously and then clutched my kids and began to make my way away from the road and into the cover of the trees, keeping my eyes on the alien. Some of my fellow runners did the same. We had to be a half-mile north of our home still, at least. I looked through the trees and could see the other aliens suspended in their own places, also waking up. They were all activating, and now we would know why they were truly here. "Oh, please, God, let them be friendly," breathed one unknown woman I passed. Right then, Melissa called. I never leave my iPhone far from me. Naturally, I had it in my running shorts. One by one, those who also would not be parted from their phones began hearing them go off. It was a cacophony of noise all around us. Ringtones ringing, 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 over and over. "Hello? Yeah, hon, I see them. Hi, sweetheart. Hey, you seeing this?" All of us were talking to someone who was concerned for our safety, and we for theirs. This was brand new. It had been 89 days since they arrived, and now they were finally doing something. "Hey, hon," I said. You're seeing this, right? Yes, are you okay? Are the kids okay? She sounded anxious. We're fine, hun. Close the doors. What? Why? Do it, honey. Just close the doors and pull the curtains. Get into the attic. My anxiety only grew as the thing moved again, lowering its head, looking around. We had to be about 100 feet from the nearest one. Melissa whined, and I could hear her urgently call for Ruddy. Let's go, honey. Come with Mama up to the playroom. But, hun, why do we... An abrupt panic roiled in my gut, and my flesh crawled in despairing urgency. I continued to push past people, herding Cameron and Sissy with me. Just now, right now. Get Jack, too. Go. I made my way through the crowd. What is it, Daddy? Cameron asked. What was it doing? Was it waking up? What will it do now? I don't know, son. I don't want to know. Let's just go. The nearest one was stretching out its arms. It did something odd, opening its maw wide, as if to breathe in the strange alien air of our planet, filling its lungs to beyond capacity, stretching out and gyrating. And then the humming started again. I couldn't see it clearly, but it appeared to descend, and that mist, whatever it was, swirled around it. I looked north, south, east, west. They were all doing it. Where I could see them through the trees, they were certainly all doing it. And finally, dispelling all doubt and confirming my worst fears, sending speed into my joints and propelling me out of there with terror, the thing looked down upon all of us and hissed. I didn't misperceive it. I didn't imagine it. It hissed at us. I knew without a doubt that we were all now in mortal danger. In a frenzied flash of emotion, everyone I loved flew through my mind. My wife and Ruddy, Cameron and Sissy, Mick, Sam and their kids, my mom and dad, Pastor Bill and Sandy, Chief Iverson and the guys at the station, Jack and Heather, friends from church, friends from life, people I'd saved and helped or who had saved and helped me. Every single one of them was now in jeopardy, and I knew it. Run! Run! I yelled to everyone around me. A cold tremor shot through my skin, and I yelled to Melissa, Honey, go, go, go! I ran. We were running, all of us, and not just me and the kids. Everyone was running. Okay, honey, she said, but I interrupted her with another, Go! And ended the call, running, pumping my legs furiously to launch us into the woods and under any cover I could. Adrenaline coursed through me, and thankfully through my kids as well, as we bolted from the road for the protective screen of the trees in the forest. I had no idea where Mick or Sam or their kids went. Where the hell is my gun when I actually need it? Every single runner previously running for freedom in defiance of fear now ran in fear for their freedom, for their very lives. I heard screaming. I looked back once, and through the madness and mayhem that had suddenly descended over all of us, I saw a woman from our church, I think it was Janet Freeberg, run and then stop short as she faced the alien. It had come down to ground level and posted up right in front of her. Janet just stopped and looked at it. And then she just stayed there. My brows furrowed. Damn it, Janet, run! I thought. She didn't run. Why wasn't she running? I thought. But it wasn't just her that stayed there. Several others with her just stopped moving once they locked eyes with that thing. It whirled around slowly, looking at any of us that were moving who it could then latch onto visually with those creepy eyes. I couldn't see them clearly as we were too far away, but as we fled through the woods, they looked pale, dead, like an old dog's eyes. Janet still didn't move. Slowly, she crumpled to the ground. So did the rest of them. It was as if her very life force got sucked right out of her. The alien hissed virulently, and I could hear gurgling noises. It was moving through the crowd, physically turning people around, and then just staring at them. One after another, connecting with them visually as it saw them running, taking away their will. What was it doing? Was it looking for one of us in particular? Why would it just stare at them? Why would it do that? People seemed taken over by some strange paralysis as it did so, stopping and slooping over or falling down erect and tense, staring with deadened eyes up at the sky, their muscles turned to unresponsive putty. And then there was another alien. It had flown down to join the others. 2 more came, 5 more. They were all doing the same thing, pursuing us humans, locking onto those of us that were running, posting up right in front of them, and then locking eyes with them. What happened then, I didn't even pretend to understand. Something physical? People just stopped fleeing when they did that, transfixed by them, and holding dead still. My own kids and I were running, and my heart was beating wildly, terrified. My heart had already been thudding in my chest from the run. Now it was a hammer smash of anguished, repeated assaults against my ribcage. Hearts just weren't made for such terrors. "Daddy, oh no!" Cameron screamed. He had seen one up ahead to our left. By some horrible stroke of fortune, it had settled on someone else to do its thing too. "Don't look at them, kids! Eyes on the ground!" I instructed them, trying to remain calm, steering back toward the road. By that time, I was sweating profusely, my face red with huffing, and my body constantly shellacked by fearful chills running down my spine. People would scream and then gurgle and then stop, paralyzed. Then the alien would move on to another target. Someone 20 feet away from us did it. I didn't look. They surely couldn't get all of us. I had to get away. "Cameron, don't scream, son." I tried to talk in as normal tone as I could. "Sissy, no screaming. Just run. Don't look back," I said, and my throat caught as I quietly instructed them, willing them to pump every ounce of energy into their little legs. I stayed with them, though I could have easily outrun them. We ran. "Don't look back, and don't look at them. Whatever you do, look away." The edge of one patch of forest was looming up, and then a long plantation. We'd never make it running through there. We'd simply go much quicker along the road itself. Running across that open expanse to the next cover of trees, beyond which lay our home, we'd be exposed and slow, and they'd just pick us off. Ahead and on the other side of the road was a tan barn with a red roof, right off Old Dover. They had livestock in there. Maybe the things would be distracted by them and leave us alone. Some people were making for that, or for the house before it. There were a lot of people headed that way. We needed to be a smaller target, the three of us. I made for the barn's little office next door. I pushed harder and urged them to keep moving. My iPhone fell out of my pocket and clattered to the road. I couldn't leave it. I needed to communicate with Melissa and she with me. My phone started ringing again. I went back and snatched it up, clutched it hard, and actually broke the screen protector. My flesh was a sweaty clamp around it. Rivulets of sweat were pouring down into my eyes, mingling with my torrent of frightened tears. My stomach was in knots. Something came shooting down out of the sky. I closed my eyes, whipped back around, grabbed my kids, and burned the rubber of my soles down Old Dover. We were all scattering in every direction. More aliens were swooping in. They were coming from all around. I took one quick precautionary look back, and I saw something I wish I hadn't. Rich Keller, one of the elders of our church, was standing there staring at an alien that had apparently paralyzed him. I thought it would move on, but it didn't. It approached him, slowly, bobbing its neck, making that damned humming noise. And then it opened its mouth wide and bit Rich Keller in half. The remainder of Rich's body shot out a jet of crimson and then crumpled to the ground. "Ah, no! Holy shit!" I cried. "Run, kids, with everything that's in you! Run!" That horrible image replayed in my mind. I couldn't shake the memory of it, and I wanted to vomit. Poor Rich. Cameron started crying and screaming when he heard my yell. He was in deep primal fear, not knowing what to do. "What, Daddy, what?" Cameron screamed. "What? What?" he screamed. "I'm running, Daddy. What did you see? Daddy, what? What, Daddy?" "I'm sorry," he wailed as he ran. He was frantically crying out and calling me in his hysteria, wondering what I had seen, and desperately trying to be obedient, squeezing my hand so hard I thought it would be crushed to powder. "Stop it, Cameron! Just go, go, go! Into the building! Just go! Sissy, keep up!" That's why they freeze you, I thought. Then they can eat you at their leisure. My eyes were filling up with tears for all the victims of such barbarism. That's why the first alien had paralyzed Janet and then others. It would simply return to consume them later. There were a lot of targets here, a lot of humans to chase after and immobilize. Feasting would come later. It was all becoming painfully and traumatically clear as we raced away from that hellish scene. The street was flowing with rivers of blood. And then I realized with horror that this was happening all over the world, even now. Even more aliens were flying in overhead. There were hundreds of us, and we were easy targets. I saw one go shooting by, low, chasing after a cluster of runners. They were fast, but they were not going to get me or my kids, I resolved. The three of us banked hard off the road, and I smashed through the big gate. Cameron was already trying to climb it, and he was yanked off of it and thrown to the ground. "Ow, Daddy, help!" His shirt at his left shoulder was ripped, and he was bleeding. A rock on the ground had gashed him when he fell. I scooped him up and I was crying. "Sissy, run! Run! Make for that tiny office!" She did so and bolted for the door. I followed her, utterly rejecting the notion of looking back. But then I heard footsteps behind me, and then a spine-chilling shriek. I whipped my head around to look quickly. Oh no! One of them had landed right behind us and had stopped to look squarely at Abigail Jesperson. She was only 15 and in our church youth group. Her screams slowed and dropped in pitch, and I couldn't help but watch in horror. Her face looked as if it was in the throes of a stroke. Every part of her that had been frenzied and trying to flee looked as if it was strangely calm now. An uncertain and false peace clung to her and silenced her. Her legs didn't move. Her body did not move. She just stood there. The alien advanced to another target. I shot one glance overhead, and there were even more of them swooping in. You can't look at them, or you can't let them look at you. They did something to you. Why? Please, God, don't let us trip and fall. Don't let us look at them. We had almost reached the small office, barreling past a blue tractor, when I saw one of them descend upon the barn to our left and settle on a sheep that had been grazing freely outside the big open barn. The alien seized upon it, carried it up into the sky, and slaughtered it midair, biting and rending. Blood, wool, and sheep parts rained down. My stomach churned. My phone kept ringing. We reached the little office. It was next to another barn with bales of hay on a tractor inside. The little office was locked. No, I thought to myself. I set Cameron down and looked back. There was pandemonium in the street. What was happening to Melissa and Ruddy? I couldn't think about that now. I cast one look back in desperation. I had to get the kids that were with me to safety. To my amazement, the window was cracked open. I ripped the flimsy screen off the window and slid it open. Get in, now!" I cried, and I threw my children inside. I clumsily hurled myself in after them, banging up my knee upon entry. I cried out in agony at the sharp pain in my left shoulder as I landed. I was just thankful that I didn't break the glass on my way through. "Cameron, the window! The window!" My son leapt up and shut and locked it quickly. Sissy smartly pulled down the blinds. "Now to the other one, quick! Unplug that AC unit and push it out of the window and let it fall. Then close the window. Hurry, kids, hurry!" I desperately cried to them as my shoulder screamed in pain. Their two little bodies heaved together and pried the little AC unit out of the window cavity, letting it clank outside. Sissy shut the window and pulled the blinds. They were both crying horrendous tears, and there was nothing I could do to assuage them. "Sissy," I said, handing her my iPhone, "take this and text Mama we're okay. Tell her to put her phone on vibrate and make no sound. Keep absolutely quiet." I made sure to put it on vibrate so they wouldn't hear us in here. "Listen to me. Stop crying. They can hear you." Cameron's eyes went wide, and he covered his mouth with his hands. Sissy whispered dictation to Siri, sent the message, and handed me my phone. "Just sit down below the windows and lay quiet for a while. Make sure that door's locked, and don't let anyone in here. I love you. Come here." They came closer. I hugged them with all my might, though my shoulder was burning and stabbing me in sharp pain with every movement. I could already feel the bruise building. Something slammed against the door. We all jerked and started. Sissy let out a yelp and covered her mouth. "Shh!" I held my finger to my mouth and lurched up. My shoulder revolted in agony, but I stood and wedged my foot against the door to block it. Someone was outside pounding on the door and asking to be let in. The voice sounded familiar, someone from our church, obviously. I could barely see outside through the slits of the blinds. He had a number 72 on his chest. Who was that? I was leaning up against the door with all my might when recognition flooded through me. Number 72. Oh no, no. I know whose number that is. We knew each other well. We had served together. We did everything together. He had looked after me and I had looked after him. We had loved each other's kids and lived in each other's lives. Mick. I choked hard and my tears came. How could I let him in? My children would die. Surely he would understand if I told him it was us, wouldn't he? I took an oath to protect people. Our code of ethics held me to that. But I couldn't let him in. I just couldn't. "Whoever's in there, please let me in! Please!" he screamed through his tears. Mick stepped away from the door to grab a rock, perhaps to throw it through the window, retrieving it and stepping back, when just then, right outside that door, something dark and tentacled descended between him and us. It hovered there, jetting out that strange mist. Some of it filtered under the door, and we felt the cold of it. Mick stopped in his tracks. I already knew what was about to happen, and I choked again, putting a fist to my mouth and trying to shield my red eyes from my panicked children. I was denying my best friend. I was dooming him. As quietly as I could, I got down on the floor and pulled my kids close to me, hugging them to my chest, shushing them with whispering, hoping they'd hear me. I was crying and muttering through quiet sobs, "Plug your ears, and whatever you do, don't look, kids." As for me, my arms were wrapped tightly around them, so I couldn't cover my ears. I heard everything. Mick's panicked struggle stilled. I heard the sound of breath escaping his lips just outside that thin door, the sound of something being chewed, and then gurgling, crunching, and snapping noises. Number 72, Mickarino, my best friend, was dead. I heard the sound of terrified screams coming from the street. I heard the sound of a car roaring to life, perhaps belonging to the owner of this farm. Churning, chugging noises and screams trailing off skyward, as if the whole car was grabbed and lifted into the air. I heard the sound of terrorized sobbing. I heard the sound of whimpering of people running out of breath from a panicked escape, catching their spit in their throats, gurgling and sobbing as they were set upon by these unearthly beings that, after 3 months, we had thought were starting to appear benign. We were wrong. I heard the sound of now knowing that was a lie. I heard the sound of my own brain remembering the prayer that I had just prayed the day before, realizing that would not be answered, at least not today. I heard the sound of vibrating text messages, one after the other, coming through on my iPhone, from Melissa, the sound of her panic from afar. I heard the sound of my kids' frightened, labored breathing against me, the sound of their tiny hearts slamming through their little chests in unbridled terror. I heard the sound of guilt washing over me and sentencing my best friend to be murdered by an alien species. I heard the sound of the sweat dripping down my cheeks. I heard the sound of less and less people screaming, less footsteps fleeing, and less activity, because less people were alive. I heard the sound of desperate uncertainty as to my wife and baby boy's fate. And then I heard the sound of commotion decreasing into silence. Finally, I heard the sound of no more humming, and everything became deathly quiet.